Absolutely.
And so I tell people that all the time, that when they say thank you for your service, the most appropriate response that any law enforcement officer can use at that moment in time is thank you for letting me serve. Because the opportunity to serve is just so significant.
All right. Nueces County Sheriff J.C. Hooper, thank you for joining me in the den.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. I look forward to it. You run a great show.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I'm glad to finally sit down with you. I know
I've been trying to get you on here for a bit.
Yes, you have.
You're a busy man. And we record kind of late.
Yeah, you did.
So
past my bedtime.
Is it really?
I'm a little sharper at 8:30 in the morning than I am at 8:30 at night. So I hope I do the show with some justice.
Well, you're going to be a little relaxed, and you might say more than you wanted to say, which works out better for us. Yes, sir. We record a little bit later because of the outside light. We need it gone, and we just grew accustomed to 8:30. The sun used to go down about 8:30. There was a time where we didn't start recording till close to 9 because the sun was still out. But now it's coming out early, but we're so busy during the day. And Rob had a daddy-daughter dance. So that was pretty awesome. You're a dad, right?
Yeah, and I did that with my daughter. We did the cotillion thing, and we had the father-daughter dance, and memories.
How many children you got?
So I've got a 22-year-old daughter and 21-year-old son.
Right.
My wife and I started a little late in life, but I think being an older parent, there's something to be said for it when it comes to having patience and maybe even being a little more financially secure when it comes to spoiling your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Little grandpa-ish to your kids. I'm sure they appreciate that.
And more than once, sure, my wife and I would have our baby, and we'd be standing in line at the HEB, and the little checkout girl would say, "Isn't it great when the grandparents get the kid for the day?" And I could roll with that, but my wife wasn't too happy about stuff like that. But
that's funny. Yeah. Can you move your mic just this way, just a little bit? There you go. Just so I can see you a little bit better.
Okay.
All right. So you are the Nueces County Sheriff.
For the last 8 years now. So I spent 35 years with the Corpus Christi Police Department. And about 8 years ago, the incumbent sheriff, Jim Kalin, retired midterm.
How long had he been in office?
I think he did close to 10 years, 10, 11 years. Yeah, he was there for a spell.
And you've been there?
8. This is my 8th year.
How long do you want to keep going?
You want to make God laugh, tell him what you're doing 3 years from now. So I just won an election a year ago.
All right.
So every sheriff in the state of Texas comes up the same year as the president of the United States, every 4 years, presidential elections. And I just won about a year ago. And so I've got 3 years on this term. Right. And like I said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him what you're doing 3 years from now. Exactly. And so the election 7 years ago or 6 years ago was I had an opponent, but a year ago I did not. And so I only needed one vote. And one vote to win, right? And up until the day of the election, my wife was saying she was undecided. And so I had to vote for myself.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting environment when you get into politics.
Yeah.
Especially after spending 35 years in an apolitical, non-political job like being a city police officer. Sure. So
yeah. So what are the qualifications for a sheriff? Because every sheriff I know looks like a cowboy to me.
Well, and you know what? And people make fun of me because, 8 years ago, they made fun of me when I put on a cowboy hat for the first time. And I wore a cowboy hat before, but, at the ranch or even at the beach. But wearing one as part of my day-to-day uniform.
Right.
And the people who knew me as a city police officer thought, all hat, no cattle. He's just part of the show. But when you hang around the sheriffs in the region and across the state, it's a symbol of a Texas sheriff. It is the uniform of the Texas sheriff, and I'm proud to wear it. And it was funny, like I said, 8 years ago, I'd get a little poked at for wearing a cowboy hat, and now people, if I'm not wearing one, people are asking, where's your hat, or where's your look,
right?
And so.
And I was real tempted to go with the hats for the podcast, but
right.
We monitor our audio through our headphones, so it's until I get a larger staff,
right.
a larger team, we gotta wear the headphones. But it'll be cooler when we don't have to.
Well, you're a pastor with a hat.
Yeah,
not every church leader or man of God wears a hat, but I think you're
enjoy
in Texas. Yeah.
So it is part of the attire for a sheriff.
Well, it's unofficial.
Unofficial.
Yeah, you'll see some sheriffs, especially in the larger cities, they'll wear a uniform every day.
Yeah.
And I have a uniform, but I choose to dress more casual and to look the part of a Texas sheriff.
What is it about the cowboy hat that does that? Because we have our DPS officers, and some of them have baseball caps. And when you see them in a cowboy hat, it's just a totally different game.
So first of all, it'll add 3 or 4 inches to your overall height.
Yes, it does.
And so, you and I are both 6 foot plus,
yes,
right? And so we don't really need that. But if you're a more diminutive law enforcement officer, an extra 3 or 4 inches to your overall appearance,
stature,
it can help. Plus, they're good in the rain.
yeah,
they'll keep the rain from going down the back of your neck.
So you mentioned height. What is it about height as well?
I think
we need something. Nothing against people who are not tall, but no offense, right?
So back in the day, and I always have that fun with the Texas Rangers, right? Back in the day, to be a ranger, you didn't find any rangers that were less than 6'2", 6'4", but now there's some smaller statured Texas Rangers. You don't. And
a little tougher sometimes.
Well, maybe back in the day too, in law enforcement, there were more knuckle draggers, right? There were more men who were 6'4" and 250. But as a profession, as a vocation evolved over time, especially with technology, you don't have to be. And I tell when we're out recruiting, I tell the potential recruits this all the time, that it's more about what's between your ears and your ability to de-escalate a situation where things that maybe 30 years ago were real quick to get physical. You ask them, you tell them, you make them, right?
Yeah.
And now it's you get between their ears with your communication, the verbal judo.
Judo, yeah.
And so you don't have to be 6'2", 250 pounds to be a jailer or a police officer. You just have to have.
So do they get training for verbal judo?
Yeah.
What kind of training do they have?
Different types. I couldn't speak specifically to it, but I know in the jail a significant part of the training is about de-escalation skills, using the right words at the right time, the tone of your voice, right? And also the volume. There's just so much that goes into it, and the ability to read the other person, and how, because communication's probably more about listening than it is speaking. And so especially when you're dealing with a mental health care consumer or somebody that's in crisis, in a jail, you've really got to trust your instincts and read the body language and everything that goes along with it.
My dad was in law enforcement for over 40 years, close to 50. And he tells us stories about how it used to be and how there was no police brutality and there was no resisting arrest. When you go and arrest somebody, part of the whole fun of being a police officer is that, for him at least, because he enjoyed it, was to have to fight somebody, because you got to take them and they didn't want to go, so you fought. And you arrested them, threw them in jail, and let them sleep it off, and then let them go. There was no charges, and that's just the way it was back then. But a lot has changed, huh?
And technology is a big part of it. everybody has
Yeah.
a cell phone.
Yeah.
And every cell phone has the ability to take pictures or to take video. And in addition to that, we've totally tricked out these cars with dash cams. There's even a camera in the back seat of our patrol cars.
Mm-hmm.
And there's body cams. And so many of the body cams that we're wearing today are automatically activated. You don't have to start them by pushing a button. When you take your taser out of the holster, the body cams in a 20-foot area, they all come on, however many body cams there are. So a big part of it, look at law enforcement. When I started in 1981, there were no cell phones. And we had a police chief back in the day, Henry Garrett, in the late 80s. And he's the first one.
I remember him.
Yeah, he's the first one that put cameras in Corpus Christi Police cars, marked units. And they actually had the receiver for the video was VHS in the trunk of every car. And you had to take the big old cassette out and take it in with you. And they all got damaged. They all got torn up. They all got destroyed.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any real tracking or accountability.
It's not as convenient as it is now. You can,
yeah.
But so do you think that has been beneficial?
Absolutely, and not just as a policing tool to police the police, but it's been very beneficial in disproving a lot of allegations and a lot of incidents that were reported to internal affairs one way, but then once the video was reviewed, and we have over 200 cameras inside the jail. And so there's not too many, and we're still working on making sure that there aren't dark places in that jail that where something could happen that wouldn't be recorded.
Right.
And so we're constantly upgrading our technology inside the jail, over 200 cameras. And
yeah, were you part of that era where you took somebody in if they had to, and there was no resisting arrest or police brutality?
With the agencies I worked for, CCPD, I'm sure the smaller agencies struggled with an environment like that at times, but everything, to my recollections, going back to 1981, everything was pretty well monitored. We had a significant training program, field training, and documentation. We had a very robust internal affairs division that, and the mentality with the agencies that I worked for starting in the 80s was that every single complaint against an officer or an employee was investigated. No matter how frivolous it sounded, everything got investigated. And so I was kind of raised already in an environment of accountability and transparency. And so I know we've improved even more in that.
As good as that, all that is, but sometimes it does limit the ability to make things a little easier. I'm saying it from a spectator, right? Because the stories my dad used to share with us, and I saw some things. Because speaking of verbal judo, my dad did that very well as well, and he enjoyed getting physical too. So he had the best of both worlds. Once he raised his voice, like, man, it would cause somebody to freeze, But I remember this one time we got home and somebody had broken into our house and stolen a TV. It was one of those big cabinet televisions back in the day. And they had broken through the back. A few days later, we're looking outside the window and my uncle's van pulls up. My dad gets off in uniform, opens the van door. There's our TV. He's got another gentleman with him, and they're taking the television off. And once they get inside, they put it down, and he starts letting them have it verbally, right? Of course. I think the physical stuff had already been done, but oh my gosh, I felt sorry for the guy. Yeah. So he told he better put it back exactly where he got it, and then ripped him a new one because he tore into the back screen window and stuff. So my dad was pretty intimidating in his youth, and he was in law enforcement up into his 70s with Constable Frank Flores and stuff. So yeah, I think law enforcement, it takes a special kind of man to be able to do that, or woman, because you're running into stuff that people are running away from.
And we're actually hiring more females now, even to work in the jail. Correctional officers, we're hiring more females now than we are males because they can do the job.
Yeah.
If you have instincts and you trust your instincts and you can be trained and you trust your training, There's no reason why a smaller statured, a smaller sized female couldn't do the job.
Yeah.
And then so
Because it's not calling for so much physicality anymore,
No,
is it?
it's really not. And there's strength in numbers too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's not a lot of one-on-one.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
and if there is, then you've got to be smart enough and have enough wisdom to back off. You know, there is something called tactical retreat, right? And you don't have everything doesn't have to be a one-on-one interaction, especially in the jail.
So what's that fine line? Because once you engage, you cannot let a scene go, right? Am I correct on that?
There is such thing as a tactical retreat, especially in a jail.
But what about out in a situation out in the street?
That's a different story out here.
Yeah.
Jails are a controlled environment, even though sometimes you get the impression that incidents get out of control. But now out here on the street, 2:00 in the morning on Main Street, and you're by yourself, there's no such thing as quitting.
Yeah. And that's what some people don't understand. I think, they see, why don't you just leave that person alone? But once you engage, you cannot let it go, right?
Well, if you can do anything and everything to be prepared and to have backup handy before you engage. Some things we're reactive so much of the time. The other person, the aggressor, is calling the shots, right? And it's those moments in time when you have to continue until you win.
Takes a special person, huh?
Yeah, it does.
What has been the most intense situation that you've found yourself in?
So there have been so many that the mind is a funny thing that you don't remember, right? And I could tell stories about, but the stories that I remember in my career are not about being in a knockdown, drag-out fight. The stories in my career are the ones that I really remember are little things like the power of the spoken word. And I'll tell you a story. So it was like 2:00 in the morning. It was in the middle of town on Galahar over there behind Parkdale Plaza. And there's a big sweeping curve on Galahar. And this motorcycle must have been going 100 miles an hour. And he laid it down. And when his bike hit the curb on the side of the road, he got ejected into a plate glass window. And it was like an auto parts store or some type of mechanic shop. And he went through the plate glass window and all the way to the back by the counter, the service counter. And he was bad. He was broken up bad. And I was the first one on the scene. EMS was rolling. And that's always a godsend because you wish EMS gets there before you do, because you make sure the breathing and stop the bleeding, right? And about that time, my partner, who happened to be a female, she arrives and she's standing over my shoulder and we're tending to the guy. I'm stopping some bleeding. And I turned to her and I said, I think he's going to be okay, man. He's breathing strong. We got the bleeding stopped. About that time, EMS is showing up. And she says, nah, he's all messed up. He's going to die. And the minute she said that guy opened his eyes and then died.
Oh, my goodness.
And so it makes you appreciate the power of the word.
Absolutely.
And a negative suggestion. And so, it's little stories like that over the years. There was an incident in the downtown area where an intoxicated guy had fallen asleep behind the wheel of the car with his foot on the accelerator, and the car was in neutral. And when I got there, the car was just almost totally in flame, right? And when I opened the door to get him out, the oxygen got inside and there was the backdraft flash and now everything. But I was able to get the guy and to drag him out. And I guess nowadays someone's getting a life-saving award for that. But I just
part of the job.
Well, and arrested him for public intoxication. And he went to jail, and that was the end of that story, So I think we've learned over to appreciate our first responders more and to acknowledge their heroic actions. But it's little things, it's some of the life and death situations that we're in. That's not what I recall, even though there were many of them, and it was by the grace of God that I didn't get seriously injured or killed when I probably should have because of bad tactics, bad judgment, or just being at the wrong place at the right time, and so it's there's.
Could it be that you're moving on instinct at that point and not really thinking about what you're doing?
And trusting your instinct. I think when I taught in the police academy for about 10 years, and when you're dealing with people or trying to train people up, especially in defensive tactics and survival skills, there's a generational thing that I noticed where people are being indoctrinated or taught not to acknowledge your instincts. But you and I both know if there was somebody standing behind you right now, staring at the back of your head, you would probably sense it and you would acknowledge it. And those God-given instincts are real. And you've got to accept the fact and not hide from them when danger is.
I had Carrie Moore on here. I don't know if you know Carrie Moore. And she was talking about a book called The Gift of Fear, and talking about how we're the only, I guess, species on the earth that fights their gut instinct.
Right.
That God has put that inside of us so that we could move on that, but we're the only ones that fight against it and put it away.
And I think that society, and this is kind of a broad statement, but I think there's actually a societal movement or that tells people, especially young people, that fear or instincts, if they're negative, if you sense that somebody is evil or somebody has bad intentions, that's somehow wrong or that's somehow inappropriate for you.
Judgmental,
or maybe prejudicial or profiling. But if it looks like a duck, you have to acknowledge that it is. And then there's also a theory about avoidance, that if I can tell by your body language that, say, you got out a traffic stop and you got out of the car, and the first thing you did when you got out of the car was took off your cowboy hat and you left it in the car. Now, why would you do that? And then you went into, as I'm talking to you, you went into a bladed stance. Instead of just front up, you bladed on me, right? So those are two big indicators right there that you're about to get physical with me, right? And then in addition to that, you start glancing. Now you're either glancing for your backup or you're glancing for an escape route after you punch me, right? And so when you add all that stuff up and then you don't acknowledge it, you're avoiding the inevitable. Your instincts tell you this is going to happen, something bad is going to happen. Or a target glance, say, I notice you staring at my handgun. Your eyes drop, and all of a sudden now you can't deny that. You can't act like that didn't happen. And you better be ready for the fight, or you better have your backup rolling.
Yeah.
And you just can't disregard that kind of information.
Yeah,
so,
that's how often are you put in that type of situation?
It depends. It depends on your job, right?
Probably every encounter.
And so I kind of chuckled down. I was telling Chief Markle and I were together this afternoon, and I was kind of chuckling because somebody called us first responders. And as a sheriff, I'm not a first responder anymore. I'm like a third responder. I mean, the first responders are out there as you and I are sitting here. The real first responders are out there.
So how often, I'm pretty sure that every stop, that alert system is on duty.
It should be. It better be.
Right.
And
you've seen Tombstone?
Yeah.
When they come up against those guys in that end of town, and everybody's looking at each other.
Yeah, and all the different eye contact.
Doc does one of these, winks at them, and then boom, everything explodes because you have to be paying attention to every little detail, every move, every eye blink, and that can be very stressful.
It can take its toll. It's usually the fatigue. The worst kind of stress is something called anticipatory stress, and some people call it anxiety, but we've always just called it anticipatory stress, and that is the fear of the unknown. So you get dispatched to shots in progress, or you get dispatched to what sounds like a really ugly family disturbance, and just driving that 3 or 4 minutes can be some of the most exhausting 3 or 4 minutes, because you're thinking, what's my tactic going to be? Yeah. Where am I going to park? Where am I going to exit the car? How am I going to approach the house? Where's my backup at? And so that anticipatory stress, it can wear on you.
My daughter's mom called me late at night. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning or so. She's a police officer in Houston, Harris County. Mm-hmm. And she's just coming off a call, and she was kind of exhausted mentally, I guess, because she was the first one on scene after an officer called shots fired. He pulled somebody over and they had shot at him. Had one detained, the one with the gun ran off. So he said, go set up perimeter. So she's the one driving into this neighborhood, not knowing where this guy who already shot at an officer is at. She said, I've never prayed as much in my life. She said, I was praying in the spirit. and she was really torn, but she had to do it. You don't have the option of going home or hiding. You have to drive into that and move. And she said there was helicopters everywhere, and then she got heard on the radio that they had caught him on another street. But that rush, that anxiety, that stress, every time a police officer has an encounter, see, we see something on TV, we see a video, it's like, oh, why was he so trigger happy, right? But they're looking at it from their experience. Like, well, you see a lady in a vehicle, you're not freaking out, you're not. But an officer who has put in that multiple times in their career, in their day maybe, or their week, is confronted with this woman, like, for instance, the woman that got shot by ICE. Mm-hmm. What was your take on that?
So that whole, first of all, this is not Minnesota. And when I see people locally, and there were some protests again today, and we saw it during the Floyd incident.
George
Floyd incident. That was also in Minnesota. And 1,300 miles from here. And when we have, especially like the local news or the different advocacy groups that try to put all law enforcement in the same box. And Corpus Christi is a different place, and the relationship between the citizens and law enforcement in Corpus Christi is a lot different than it is in Minnesota between their law enforcement. And ICE means Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Mm-hmm.
Enforcement keyword.
The law,
yes.
Right? And so those federal police officers, and that's what they are, they call them agents, but they're federal police officers. They took the same oath of office that I did, that a police officer, a deputy constable, a deputy sheriff, we all took the same oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and enforce the laws, right? And so they're doing their job. And if there are people in this country, and it looks like there are, that disagree with those men and women in law enforcement doing their job and enforcing the law, then they need to change the law, period.
Yeah.
And so federal immigration and deportation laws are legit. And the courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court, said, yeah, these are real laws. And just because the previous administration
didn't enforce them,
didn't want to enforce them, then they should have, at that time, gone through the judicial system and changed the laws. and if that could have been done, and I don't think it could have been done. I don't think the will was there, and they knew that, and that's why they disregarded the laws for 4 years, and now we're to a point where we have an administration and direction in federal law enforcement to enforce these laws. And so it's a shame that something like that is happening, and I wish, and the media is complicit in the messaging and the revolt that's going on against the men and women who are attempting to enforce.
Entertainers not helping.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but I mean, you've got to respect the criminal justice system in all of the parts, you know, and that's the judicial is a big part of that. Change the law if you want to disregard that.
But people don't want that law changed because they see the importance of it.
Yeah.
You got a small group that's loud, and they make something, they create something that's not really there.
Yeah.
You know, you got people like at the Grammys giving speeches against ICE and all that kind of stuff.
So I would bet, and whenever you have a room full of people, especially, you know, that don't agree with the enforcement action, ask them if they have a passport. And they'll raise their hand. The majority of them, especially in the world travelers like Hollywood, they have why do you have a passport? They have a passport because they respect the laws of other countries that require a passport to come into their country.
Yeah.
But the millions and millions of people that came across the border didn't have a passport, and they didn't respect our laws coming in. And so I know the focus early on is to remove the most violent offenders first, but ultimately everyone who came into the country illegally has broken the law, and they need to go back and do it the right way. And so my mom was a resident alien. Dad brought her back from Germany. And I remember all my life, and she's 90 years old now, but I remember all my life, it was like every 5 or 10 years, she had to go to San Antonio, the immigration office in San Antonio, and get her resident alien card validated to continue to stay in this country. And it wasn't until about 8 years ago that she finally became a United States citizen, just in time to vote for her son to be the sheriff of Nueces County.
Wow.
So, and I remember going to the ceremony at the federal courthouse and watching her raise her hand and take the oath of citizenship. And it was a proud day.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of just misinformation on all that, and people taking things out of context and making them bigger than what they are. Like, for instance, like I said, the Grammys, you know, like, oh, we're all one people and love. And bro, you're talking about an agency is taking out child molesters and rapists.
Yeah. And that's covering a lot of missing children, thousands and thousands of them.
But I think they're being used to try to knock that off and keep it from happening.
Yeah. And you know what? I went to the border about the time that Biden was sworn in, and I saw the detention centers down there. And it was still under the Trump administration, and there were large detention centers down there, and there were men our age with children that they were claiming were theirs to help get them into the country. But you're a daddy, I'm a daddy. I can tell when a child is with their daddy, and those children were nothing but instruments and pawns to get these fighting age men into this country.
And that's what these people protesting don't understand. They don't know what's happening at the border. They don't know the travesties that are taking place when these children are being trafficked, even by just the coyotes, sexually abusing them and using sex for payment as well at times. Some of them dying in the brush because of getting lost or somebody taking advantage of somebody else. It happens all the time.
Yes.
I had a law enforcement person from the Falfurrias area, I believe it was. He says, we find dead people out there all the time.
Well, my fellow sheriff in Brooks County, Benny Martinez, and Brooks County is one of those counties that was traversed, and there were trails through the ranches, and he wore a black cowboy hat because he recovered more bodies in Brooks County than any county in the state of Texas. And he was on a constant recovery mission. He'd get called by the hunters or by the ranchers who were just doing their
Daily things.
riding their fences,
Yeah.
and they're finding bodies.
And that's a story that's not being told
No.
because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's the reality. And as long as they think that they can get away with staying here, they'll take those risks because of the benefits.
Got a lot of work to do, and prayer is a big part of it. I mean, you're a man of God.
Absolutely.
I'm a man of God, and we have compassion.
That's right.
But we also respect borders, language, and culture, right, of our country, of our great country. One of the most compassionate and giving countries that God has helped us create. But we've got to respect the rule of law, or else we won't have a country anymore. And
just looking at it this way, well, you're supposed to be a Christian, you're supposed to be compassionate, but just shutting down the border to 95 or 99%, you're eliminating those deaths by a substantial amount.
So I believe what I heard the other day, that fentanyl overdoses are down 20% just in the period of time that the border shut down. 20% fewer overdoses and deaths from fentanyl that was coming, not to mention the enforcement that's being done on the water with the boats that are bringing in the poison. I mean, there's a very significant effort being made. And not only that, but the Nueces County Jail. So I have a collaborative relationship with Immigration and Custom Enforcement, that every single person that gets booked into the Nueces County Jail, and no one's ever been booked in on a immigration charge, but they have been booked in for everything from robbery to sexual assault to murder. We book in about 40 people a day. Different agencies, CCPD, DPS, the constables. We accept their prisoners, and every single prisoner that gets booked into the jail on a state penal code violation gets checked against the immigration database, and that's called 287G. And a year ago, under the previous administration, and for the last 7 years, as long as I've been the sheriff, we've always housed between 25 and 30 immigration detainers. And what that is someone comes in, and it doesn't matter the color of their skin, it doesn't matter their last name, everybody gets checked against the immigration database. And for the last 7 years, at any given time, we've had 25 to 30. Today, we have 11. And that's a direct result of that border being shut down, because Nueces County, Corpus Christi, has never been a destination for illegal immigrants, but it's always been a pass-through because of Highway 77. So we've got 32 miles of Highway 77 from Bishop to the River Bridge in Corpus Christi, and it's usually those traffic stops that result in, apprehension of people who are in the country illegally. And if they end up in the Nueces County Jail on some other charge, when the charge that got them into the jail in the first place is totally adjudicated, I call Border Patrol, and Border Patrol by statute has 48 hours to come and get them, or else I'm obligated by my collaborative agreement to release them on the 900 block of Leopard. And Border Patrol has been real good about coming and getting them. And that's why we are not a sanctuary city and a sanctuary county, because what's going on in Minnesota, or what was going on in Minnesota, is the sheriffs there, they didn't have that agreement with ICE and Border Patrol. They refused to hand them over on those detainers. They never created detainers.
Why is that? Is it coming from the law enforcement itself or from the higher ups?
I don't know. It's a sheriff, and we have them here in Texas, in the larger cities, that refuse to have that collaborative agreement with Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, and they get elected. So sheriff, being an elected position, they've got to do what their constituents want them to do. And so in Nueces County, I am obviously doing what
The constituents.
constituents want me to do, but in Bexar County, in Harris County, in Dallas County, there's a different environment there.
Leftist. Hmm. To their own detriment.
To the detriment of the public safety and public order.
Hmm.
I mean, and it's pretty obvious too
Yeah.
if you look at the crime rate, and so I think Nueces County, Corpus Christi, they respect law and order, and they want an orderly environment. They don't want, we have our challenges. We have too many homeless people. I don't know if you've been around the courthouse or City Hall. I mean, there's bodies laying everywhere up and down the sidewalk, especially this time of year. And so we do have our challenges to public order, and that's one of the biggest ones we have now is the homeless population.
Mm. So how much has the crime rate come down since this new administration?
I couldn't answer that. I mean, I'd like to think that because the jail population today is 970, which is 83% of my capacity, whereas a year ago we were well over 100%.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's kind of a, not kind of an unofficial.
Telltale.
Yeah.
It tells a
it's
story.
not scientific. But
Well, I hear that nationwide the crime rate has gone down significantly.
Yeah.
And still, he's so mean.
Yeah.
Talking about Trump, he's so mean. Yet he is creating a safer environment for everyone. He's getting rid of violent criminals.
Yep.
Getting rid of fentanyl, which is killing children and people in general. Helping the world create peace. I think he's brokered like 8 peace treaties.
Yeah.
And they'll still call him mean.
And it's just, I guess he's just an easy guy to dislike. I don't know. But what's funny? It was back before he got into politics, and he was this pop culture phenomenon with his television shows and everything. I didn't watch the guy, didn't like the guy. I mean, he had nothing for me. I mean, I didn't find anything attractive about the guy when he was in pop culture. But the majority of Hollywood and the media loved him. It was just amazing. And I always thought he was just a brash, loudmouth Yankee from New York that was arrogant and rude and mean in that environment.
Oh, yeah.
And he still has those traits to some degree, and he doesn't do himself any favors sometimes with his brashness. But if you look at his policies and what he's done for this country, it's amazing.
People say, look at his fruit. Yeah. And I said, that's what I do look at.
Exactly.
I look at his fruit.
Yeah, look at his works. Right.
Yeah. So speaking of law enforcement and administrations and stuff, let's talk about how we met. You remember, that's a fun topic and story. COVID 2020, everybody's shutting down. Governor Abbott does not put his order towards churches. He says churches are exempt according to the Constitution. But County Judge Barbara Canales made a separate order and included churches in that order to be shut down. And she called law enforcement to come shut us down. How did you guys hear about us? Because I think there were some other churches that were open. How did you guys hear about us being open?
I forget where the intelligence came from, but I think at that time, this church was one of the more attended. You had a very loyal congregation, and I'm sure you still do. And we were, somehow it got back to the judge's office that this was a flashpoint for the spread of the virus because of the number of people you had showing up at the time. So she sent law enforcement out here, and I made the decision not to arrest anybody and not to threaten anybody, but to stand out on that sidewalk and try to educate,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't know. That was the biggest thing about the COVID, is we were being told so many different
Right.
things, and we didn't know who to believe.
Mm.
And so the last thing I was going to do, even though I was being prompted to turn off your electricity
Really?
and to chain the doors.
Really? I didn't know
But
that.
yeah, I mean, that was a pressure that I was under with my troops. And I made it clear to them that we're not doing that. We're not going
Yeah.
to turn off anybody's electricity. We're not going to chain any doors.
Yeah.
But we are going to try to talk to people and just make sure
Yeah.
they know
Mhm.
that we don't know.
Yeah, you and your officers were very respectful. We had some conversations outside
Mhm.
and stuff, and but then it blew up, and all the news agencies everywhere were calling and
Well,
making
you
all
know
kinds.
what? I mean, that was such a, like I said, and it wasn't just the churches, but what struck me as really odd was that some of these mayors and leaders in our coastal cities, one of the first things they shut down was their boat ramps, where
Mm.
they didn't want anybody launching boats and going fishing during the COVID. And that same county judge at the time was pressuring law enforcement to shut down the beaches
Mm.
and to barricade the beaches. And then so they barricaded the beaches, and law enforcement didn't do it. Nueces County Sheriff did not do that, refused to participate. But they used Public Works to shut down, put big water vessels and barricades on these access roads, and people just walked around them. And
Is it against the law to do that?
to shut
The
down the beach?
barricade? Yeah.
So the Texas Open Beach Act, right? But during an emergency, I mean, a lot of things go out the window. But the funniest thing was, I guess, is we were being prodded to go onto the beach and tell people to stand 6 foot apart. I mean, to actually have my deputies go down the beach and physically separate people standing on the beach. And
There was so much stupidity taking place.
there was
during
a
that
lot of panic. There was a lot
Yeah.
of, like I said, misinformation,
Yeah.
and then there was a governmental power grab.
Oh yeah.
That was a huge part of it.
You could see it. So what is the chain of command when it comes to that? Who has more authority? Is it the county judge or the sheriff?
So the county judge is officially the director of emergency management for every county, and most of these counties now have an office of emergency management. But when it comes to evacuation orders, it's the county judge.
Oh yeah.
But she can only do so much to another elected official.
Yeah.
See, and I tell people that all the time, that I don't work for the county judge. I don't work for the commissioner's court,
Uh-huh.
but they got my checkbook.
Yeah.
And so
They're the purse.
an elected sheriff, and the sheriff office budget is the biggest budget in the county.
Wow.
And so I'm dependent on the commissioner's court and on the county judge to fund and to take care of my employees, like this 10% pay raise they got this year. And so the current county
Judge.
commissioner's court and judge,
Mhm.
they've done well.
Yeah.
So the other thing that came into play during the COVID when it comes to funding was all of that ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act money, and the federal government was throwing a lot of money at cities and counties to try to mold and manipulate them into different beings, right?
Mhm.
And so that was another thing that's just now going away. I mean,
We almost got some of that money to
the church
to
did.
remodel.
Really?
Not remodel, to restore our old Methodist church building. And somebody just recently came up to you. That was ARPA money. Do you know what that's supposed to be for the COVID? I was like, do you know we're the only ones open during COVID? So if anybody, should get that, I think we should. It didn't matter. We didn't get it, but it's no big deal. We didn't have it before. But there was.
Did you lose parishioners?
No.
No. I mean, as far as death.
We lost one of our young men, who was my right-hand man.
Okay.
But this was in July. Everything had already opened up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was COVID so much
I know.
as
And there was also a lot
treatments.
of misinformation about that too, and that so many people that died during that period of time were sickly extremely sickly.
Yeah.
And the COVID was like the final. And you talk to people in the medical, the nurses and the people in medical, and you talk to different people in different walks of life, and everybody has their own opinion. It was a tough time, but a lot of it was just flat out misinformation
and panic.
and
People
panic.
were panicking, and I think the reaction
Yeah,
was worse than the actual sickness,
yeah.
and people were overreacting, and some of the treatments I think were counterproductive.
Well, you know what I remember? The county judge at the time putting this order out for everybody to turn in their no longer needed CPAP machines because ventilators were on such short supply that these CPAP machines were going to be needed moving forward. Nothing ever got done with all those. And it's like every week or every month there was some new demand or new revelation about the crisis and where we were going to go from here. But well, you know what, and that's how we met.
That's how we met.
And I'm glad I met you. It was,
Yeah. And after that, we kept running into each other and became close friends. And I think people don't understand relationships that leaders have in a community. We don't always see eye to eye with all the leadership, but there is like an understanding when it comes to leadership because we don't always have everything we need to make decisions. We're making decisions, based on the information we have and the guidance that God gives us. But as leaders, we kind of understand each other. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand.
And we have the same goal and the same intent, and that is service.
Right.
Service to others.
Absolutely.
And so I tell people that all the time, that when they say thank you for your service, the most appropriate response that any law enforcement officer can use at that moment in time is thank you for letting me serve. Because the opportunity to serve is just so significant. I mean, and you could probably quote the Bible verse about the servant being the most powerful, the most important.
If anyone desires to be great, let him be a servant of all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so those of us that are blessed to be in a position of service, especially as a servant leader, right? Somebody who has the ability to motivate and direct other servants, right? Like you have your congregation. I have my 350 employees at the Nueces County Sheriff's Office. And if I can motivate them to serve with the same philosophy and theory that I use, and that is compassion and professionalism and transparency, if I can motivate them to operate in that manner, then we'll continue to have a successful agency.
What is it like to lead a group like that?
It's
almost like a group of warriors.
Yeah, it's significant.
As soon as you said 350, I thought of Sparta.
Yeah, 350 and 220 of them work in the jail.
Oh, really?
And so about 350 in all. And it's just, and to this day, I'm in awe of what they do, and I can't get surprised anymore because the work that they put in and their dedication. And traditionally, the county doesn't pay as much as CCPD or DPS. And so we have a lot of people working for the county, and there's like 1,200 overall in county employees, and the sheriff's office has 350 of them. And some of them have been there for 15, 20, 30 years. And they're certainly not doing it for the money.
Right.
They're doing it for the love of the county and the ability to serve.
Yeah. The scripture says that when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, they groan.
Yeah.
I always thank God whenever there's people who are believers in leadership. Because I know that they have somebody to look to for guidance and instruction. You are a believer. You believe in God. Tell me a little bit before we close, a little bit about your relationship with God.
So I was raised actually kindergarten, first and second grade. I went to a Catholic school, and I was raised Catholic. My mama was a Catholic coming over from Germany, and my dad converted. And so it was always about Catholicism and Christianity in the form of Catholicism. And, being an altar boy growing up, and then being the president or the elected president of the CYO, the Catholic Youth Organization. And it was always just part of us. It was a significant part of the family and in my formation growing up. And, this, I mean, there's peaks and valleys in your faith journey where sometimes you fall away a little bit, but you can always come back. You can come back stronger. And the last 8 years have made me even stronger because I realized the importance and the significance of having that guiding aspect in my decision making. And we were talking earlier about anticipatory stress, or about being en route to a call, and that's usually where the best prayer happens. And even today, if I'm to walk up on a stage and to speak to 200 people, 500 people about some topic, there's a prayer for God to guide me in my words and give me that wisdom that Solomon or King Samuel asked from God. Give me that discerning heart in my leadership. You want power, you want money, or do you want wisdom? I want wisdom, right? And so I think that is kind of was the formation process growing up and carrying it today, and there was a time early on, especially in the political theater, the political realm, where men of God were kind of told, don't mix politics and religion, keep them separate. That whole misguided thought of what really is separation of church and state.
Right.
And as an elected official, I'm not compelling anybody to follow me or to believe in my Christian beliefs, but that doesn't mean, and the gospel just last week in church was about not covering your lantern with a bushel basket.
Right.
Let it be seen.
Right.
Let it be heard. It's not gonna do any damage. If anything, it'll do some good.
Yeah, your Christianity should impact and overflow into everything you do.
Exactly.
So you've put your faith and your trust in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior.
Absolutely.
Amen. I try to always talk to people about that, because some people believe if you go to church or if you're a good person, that's not going to cut it.
No.
We have to put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If we leave this earth without a Savior, there's a destination that we're headed to, and that's hell. We all fall short of the glory of God. The scripture says there's none righteous, no, not one, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Therefore God sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him would not perish but have everlasting life. So we surrender ourselves, we humble ourselves, we receive his righteousness, and our sin is placed upon him on the cross, and therefore we become the righteousness of God. And that's the only way that we get saved. It's not by works, lest any man should boast. And I'm glad to hear that. And I already knew this about you. I've run into you in a lot of Christian events and had the opportunity to discuss some issues with you. So I'm glad to be able to call you a friend.
Absolutely.
And a brother in Christ.
I appreciate it.
Amen.
Amen.
Sheriff J.C. Hooper, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me in the den.
Glad to be here.
Any final words?
No, sir. God bless you.
God bless you too.